Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Hey, this is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this week's edition of The Business Side of Music. This week in the studio, we have Ken McMeans. Ken, as an artist and a writer, has had his songs heard on TV shows like ABC's General Hospital. As a songwriter, he's been nominated for numerous industry awards. He's had his songs picked up by such artists as Linda Ronstadt, Kim Carnes, Joe Cocker, and John Waite, one of my favorites. He's also spent time in front of the camera, I found out, as an actor, stunt writer, stand-in photo doubler, and a stunt car driver, I think. We're going to have to ask about that one in a little bit. Roles include such TV hit shows and movies, including Just Shoot Me, Diagnosis Murder, Family Man, Volcano, and Starship Troopers, just to name a few. He's a sitting member on the Western Affairs Association Board of Directors. He's represented such acts as Jody Messina, Juice Newton, and his booking agency, Ken McMeans Presents, currently represents such country recording artists as Brian White, Lila McCann, Michael Peterson, and Andrea Pearson. In addition to his work as an agent, he has his own touring group that I understand just signed a recording deal, Americana Trio Stereo Chickens. Ken, welcome to the show. Thanks.
Hey, Bob. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Good to have you. I know it was a bit of a drive down from Morro Bay, which is where you're based out of.
Yes, I am. Yeah, that's sort of a unique
yeah,
I
I guess when you talk about most agents or managers, but especially agents, they're out of Los Angeles or Nashville or New York, and you're in a small little town of what, about 10 or 15,000 people?
10,000 people, and,
yeah.
And my home office looks out over the ocean. So
I'll be there tomorrow. Yeah. So tell us a little bit. First of all, you started out as a songwriter.
I started out writing songs and playing music when I was 17, and that was my life's goal, my life's quest. And I think about the time I was 22 or 23, I went to work in the business part of music in L.A. and worked at a publishing company, had a full-service production company, managed groups, had no idea what I was doing, none. I was in L.A. till about early 90s, pretending to be working in the music business. So
and then you went on into some acting.
I did. I in 1992 I just got cut out of one deal after another. I'd get somebody a record deal, I'd get cut out of the deal. Had songs that were supposed to be on records of my own that got cut for all sorts of greedy reasons, and I just decided I wasn't going to do work in the music business ever again for the rest of my life, and so I went into movie and television
and became a star.
6 years. Yeah, no, I did a lot of. I actually got in to be a stunt writer because I grew up in the racehorse world, and so I got in to do that, but there wasn't a lot of that going on, and had to get into the Screen Actors Guild and all of that, and I was really lucky on my second non-union extra role. I ended up with a speaking part in the movie Volcano on set, and so that's how I got into the Screen Actors Guild. So
did that make it onto the film?
I'm in the film quite a bit. They cut most of my lines. I had 12 lines. You hear me giving a couple of them. Why there's some other stuff going on.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that movie.
Yeah, I'm all over in the movie. But I remember my daughter was like, I want to say she was like 3 or 4 the first time she saw the movie, and she said, Dad, she called me on the phone. She said, Dad, you are just a natural walker. Because I was just walking back and forth all the time, and that was my part. I was in the office.
Hey, screen time, right? It's screen time.
It was screen time. I was on the screen a lot. So, and then so I did it for 6 years. I was on the show Just Shoot Me as a bartender for a number of seasons. My favorite thing that I did was I was Matt Damon's stand-in photo double on Ocean's 11 for 5 months. That was a lot of memories from that.
Tough job.
Matt. Yeah, and But, you know, my heart wasn't really in acting. So, you know, I did it for 6 years, made a living, and then moved on.
So how did you get into booking? Because, you know, that's a totally different animal from being an artist and a songwriter or even being a manager. I mean, booking is a total different breed out there.
Sure. You know, in 2000, I started this cowboy comedy act that went around to fairs. And
now, were you involved in that, or was it just guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was me and my brother and a couple other guys, and we had these cowboy costume horses. And if you've been to a fair in the United States in the last 17 years, you've seen us because we've done 1,500 fairs. I have 3 teams that travel year round with that show around the country. A lot of California fairs, but all over the country. So by virtue of that, I started to know fair managers and the entertainment buyers for fairs. And so we were doing that, and I sort of decided I wasn't going back into music. And it was about 5 years ago. In California, the state took away all of the funding for the fairs. And so I started looking I had a lot of fair manager friends, and they were looking at, you know, we can't spend $750,000 to have Tim McGraw at our fair, you know, but they still wanted, especially the smaller fairs, they still needed to have country music. And you know, I just wanted to help find affordable country artists for fairs, you know, artists that were in the $10,000 or $15,000 range, you know, for the smaller fairs. So I started, you know, made a trip out to Nashville. I ended up with this teen sister duo, Jenny and Ashley, and that's where it got started. And then I had, you know, got to have somebody connecting me with David Frizzell. And though I worked for David for a year, I never booked him on a single job. But that led to some other things, you know, and I ended up working with Keith Whitley and Laurie Morgan's son, Jesse Keith Whitley. And then it kind of snowballed. And but the big turning point for me as an agent, so, you know, I was using my fair connections to get, you know, these guys.
That you had built up through your own
that I built
group.
through having this comedy show for all the years. And a lot of fair manager friends of mine and all that. But I was fortunate. Wilson Events out here in California that produced the music for the main stages on probably 50 fairs. They had Ethan from Wilson Events and said, "Why don't you put together a package show of like 3 male country artists, and then do another one with 3 female country artists. Price it reasonably, bring it to us. We'll get you some dates for it." So we started looking at what that looked like, and that would be like artists from the 90s. And one of the first guys that I reached out to was Brian White, and was a, you know, great country singer. Had 7 #1 hits, you know, Grammys, you know, the whole works, millions of records sold. And so I started working. The package never actually came together, but that relationship with Brian, you know, Brian's been with me now for 4 years, and he's my flagship artist. He's a great guy. You know, we just do all sorts of different kinds of shows, from, you know, listening rooms to big stage stuff with him. But working with Brian gave me street cred. So when I started, you know, being able to say, hey, you know, I represent Brian White, not only did people start taking me seriously, I was also able to start picking up other major artists.
Hey, this is Bob Bender, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Bob Bender, president of Bob Bender Productions. Since 1987, our company has provided consultation and artist direction services for recording industry artists. If you're looking to take your music career to the next level, or simply need advice on jump-starting a project or marketing one that's been completed, then we're here to assist you with over 40 years of experience in the entertainment business. We offer individual or group sessions, in person, or over the phone or Skype consultations. Feel free to call our office at 661-326-1140 or email us at info@bobbenderproductions.com for more details.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender. We're here with Ken McMeans, talking about what we talk about, the business side of music. Now, I worked in the fair business for a while myself. I produced on probably about 15 or 20 different fair stages around the West Coast. And that's a tough business. I mean, and you said it, fair managers and fair boards, they have no budgets. And with their budgets being slashed, I remember back in the day, the one fair that I used to work, we had a main stage, and then we had what we called the Budweiser stage, which was the free stage. And the main stage would have, Gloria Estefan and Miami Sound Machine, and have Johnny Cash, and have all these great acts that were $50,000, $60,000 or $70,000. And then on the Budweiser stage, we'd have these small, either tribute acts or either up and coming, or acts that were kind of on the backside of their career, smaller budgets. Is it still that way, or are fairs now looking for? Are they more acceptable to independent artists? Are they still wanting a name brand? Or
the challenge is that everybody wants the bright, shiny new thing, and so
or they want the Taylor Swift or the Tim McGraw that nobody can afford,
or the huge dollar thing. And my contention is that I represent several artists that are from the '90s, early 2000s that still have the exact same fan base that they had back then. So, and they're affordable. So that's been my whole premise, and it works pretty well. We are able to give fairs a really great act, that marquee name that draws a lot of people, that doesn't cost them that much money.
And especially the smaller fairs. When you get out of the major markets, you get out of Los Angeles and San Francisco and Salt Lake, you get into these smaller communities like Anderson or Madera or Merced, right, on the West Coast. They're looking, for what they can afford, but they still need that name draw.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so someone like a Brian White or a Lila McCann, the Michael Peterson, they'll do it.
Yeah.
And now, do they tour with bands, or are they touring solo, or?
Well, here's the other side of that, and I'm booking more acoustic shows now than anything I do, and the truth of the matter is, when the fans come out, especially if it's a ticketed show at a fair, they're coming out whether there's a full band or there's an acoustic show. Yeah. So the acoustic shows are more affordable for the fair. The artist actually makes more money on those shows, and I think that the fans get a more intimate, up-close connection.
It becomes that intimate evening with.
An evening with, yeah. And I think, as somebody that loves music and goes to a lot of shows, I'd almost always prefer to go to an acoustic show.
Yeah.
I just love that.
And honestly, when you have someone like a Brian White or a Michael Peterson, who we've worked with, they put on a great performance, just them and a guitar.
Right.
Right. And the storytelling, and the just how they approach the songs in front of that audience, it's very cool.
Yeah, I always find that, and I travel a lot with Brian in particular, but that the artist tends to connect more with the audience when it's an acoustic show, than it is when it's the full band and all that. So.
Do you see the future of the live concert business, especially with fairs and festivals? Do you see it staying the way it is? Do you see any changes coming about, or? Well, besides that, there's no money.
This is the thing. I have a lot of new artists that reach out to me, and when I start talking to them about being in music, and you know this, Bob, because you've been in music your whole life, the only thing there is now as far as revenue stream is generally touring.
It is.
So
you're right.
Everything. This is what I tell artists, even the established artists. Everything we do is so that we can generate more dates for more money. So that's what we're doing all the time. That's the model. So being out touring is really important. So the thing is that happens is everybody is out trying to tour, even down to the songwriters, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because it's the only way for songwriters to make money. So there's a lot of competition now for those dates, and so and that's a challenge. So everybody is vying for those fair spots, from the beginning artists to the biggest artists.
So do you find it more competitive now?
I think, I've only really been doing the booking for 5 years, so I can't really have anything to compare it to, but It's very competitive.
Yeah. And there's several different, this is one of the things we found interesting. There's different fair conventions that go on. And of course, there's the granddaddy of them all in Las Vegas every year, which is how we met you a couple of years
Correct.
ago.
Yeah.
Which has a couple thousand people and a few hundred booths on the trade show floor. And of course, what we found interesting when we went to that one was here's all these trade show exhibit booths, and one is promoting pig racing and another one's promoting jugglers and stilt walkers, and in the middle of that is Ken McMeans Presents,
Right.
trying to push your acts, and of course fairs, they're known for their grounds acts. I mean, that's I think kind of what you guys were starting with your brothers initially, but we found that when we tried. We would take an artist to that, someone that was new, was trying to break into it, that if you don't have a name, there are ways to get in. There are those smaller stages, or what we call grounds acts in that end of the business. There's not a lot of money in it, but if they hustle and they stay at it and they're tenacious about it, they can build a following. We actually have one guy out of New York who's been doing this for several years, who, that's he's never had a hit, never had a song on the radio, but it's him and his guitar, and he goes around and, plays at different fairs and makes a living. So I guess there is that end of it.
Yeah, and what I always tell new artists, and, go get established on the fair circuit. You're going to be playing fairs at every level of your career. Because I can remember somebody saying, some new artist said, "Oh, I'm not going to go out and play at the county fair," and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's where all the money is going to be for the rest of your career, no matter what level you are. And so doing those secondary stages is a great way to get better at your craft, to work with the smaller audiences, and the great thing about the secondary stages for artists is that they generally book you for 3 or 4 or multiple days, so you're not just there for that one day, that one show. So it works out money wise.
But it takes time to get into that circuit, I guess.
Yes, it does.
Because you really, it's relationships.
Yes,
yeah.
It's probably 50% relationships and 50% performance. I
Yeah,
mean, really, those relationships that I've had with the fairs. Over the years is such an important thing, because I can pick up the phone and call anybody at a fair and say, can you guys use this? And the other great thing from getting to know those people is you also know what kind of budget each fair has for those stages. So I know what fits and what doesn't.
So let's go in a little different direction now. We recently discovered that you're doing events at some wineries, and of course, this show this week is being taped out in California, and we're known for our wineries, especially on the Central Coast where you live.
Yes.
My wife and I discovered that there are about 300 plus wineries within about a 50, 60 mile radius of where you live, and we're trying to hit everyone at some point. But are wineries becoming a new opportunity for artists?
Yeah, they are, and of course, by virtue of where I live in Morro Bay, as you said, within 30 or 40 minutes of my house, there's literally 350 wineries. So because there's so many of them, they're becoming more competitive and finding ways to get new customers to come in and to stay. And so a lot of them are doing music, if it's just basically secondary stage stuff, 2 or 3 days a week, especially in the summer. And for 3 or 4 hours a day. And then the other wineries, there's also different levels of, like Vino Robles in Paso has the big stage.
Right.
And so I, just started out selfishly for me, wanting to put some of my artists into wineries so they could come out and visit us in Morro Bay and hang out with us and we could get to know them. So we started, I produced some music for Eberly Winery. They have a Concert in the Cave series that we put together, and we do, pretty big artists there. We were doing it every month, and I think we just backed off to 4 times a year. But so we get the artists out, and they do those, and those are great fill-in dates. Also, if we have fair dates, I know I can break them off to do a couple smaller shows at the wineries in that region.
Do you see other opportunities in the horizon? I mean, fairs and festivals and wineries, or there's other outlets that are yet to be discovered for artists?
Yeah, live music is great, right? I mean, everybody's doing it. I didn't start out to be thinking I was going to be booking artists at clubs because, clubs are, as we know, they generally don't pay as much money, but, and it's a little more complicated, getting deposits in and getting contracts back with clubs. But clubs are very key now with what I do. And I probably book clubs in probably 35, 40 states in the country, because when we get those anchor dates, an anchor date, for those who don't know, that's if you have a bigger money date at a fair and you're bringing somebody across the country to play that date at the fair, you got to fill in other dates. So I use clubs a lot for that. I have a pretty good network of clubs where I know I can, pick up a Wednesday or a Thursday to go with those weekend dates.
Hey, this is Bob Bender, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender, and we're here with Ken McMeans from Ken McMeans Presents, talking about getting into other avenues of venue performances besides the traditional concert stage at the theaters or the arenas. I know that when I started in the business, one of the early days, I was in the fair circuit, and it's busy and you got a lot of acts coming through. I think that we touched on something briefly earlier, which is the revenue stream now is the live performance and merch. You're going to sell T-shirts and hats and posters and such. We're not really necessarily selling CDs or songs or downloads, but so it is that live performance. Do you see an opportunity for young independent artists? One of the things I notice now is you don't have to have a record deal, but if you've got something on YouTube and you can, or Facebook or both, and you get a following, you can kind of create your own little destiny there. Do you see fairs looking at independent artists? Or are they still looking for you?
Social media numbers are mattering more and more, and so I know fairs where they literally want the artist to have so many Facebook followers, so many Twitter followers, so many YouTube views. So, when it's not artists that have, a big record deal or major hits, those things look pretty good. You can bullet point. There's one artist that I'm working with, and she's been moderately successful, but she's had over 1 million downloads of her music. Those are big numbers.
Yeah, those are big numbers.
Those are big numbers. So those things all matter. I mean, when I'm selling artists to fairs or to theaters or casinos, I'm bullet pointing everything that's, amazing about them from YouTube views. I got artists that have, Brian
that's
White
important. That's what they're looking at, right?
Brian White has on the one song, God Gave Me You, has probably 250 million YouTube views in various forms on that song. So
that's a strong selling point when you're going to the buyer for that fair.
Yeah.
They want to see those.
Yeah, because as an agent, whatever you're going to say to the buyer to try to convince him to have the artist that maybe he doesn't know, he's going to have to say those same things to his guests to get them to the show.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. So let's drift in a little different direction here. Let's talk about your group, Stereo Chickens.
Yeah, you just never know what's going to happen.
You haven't given up playing, obviously. Or you did, and you're back into it.
I had, and I'll tell you the story. I'll try to shorten it up. So I hadn't played for about 15 years, and a few years ago, there was a club owner who bounced some checks to won't say the name of the club or the owner.
That's never happened.
To some of my artists. And me, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was just starting out. I didn't want to have this thing with these artists I was representing that, they didn't get paid on a show I booked them on. So I paid them all. And it was like $700, $800. And then I was not able to get the money back from the venue owner, but he had this guitar. He had this Taylor guitar that was a built-to-order $5,800 guitar. I took that in trade for that money. And I had taken the guitar and I put it up for sale at the Central Coast Music in Morro Bay. And I put it up for sale for $4,200. And over the next couple of weeks, everybody in town was coming up and said, man, I played that guitar of yours. That's great. And I was starting to get this thing. I'm out all this money. I'm not selling the guitar, but he's playing it. I went and got the guitar, and I started playing again. And so, great thing about being an agent, I was able to book myself as an opening act on a lot of my bigger shows. And so that's sort of what it started. My wife and I sort of started that. And then last August, we added a mandolin player and became a trio. And that's when it really took off, and we signed a multi-year management deal in Nashville with Kathy Nikos, who I'd worked with Andy Griggs and some other artists over the years. And then, we just, little by little, we've got some, not stuff I'm supposed to really talk about, but we have some pending interest from a couple different labels. And
how did you come up with the name Stereo Chickens?
Well, how long is this podcast, Bob?
As long as we need it to be.
I was originally, when I first started playing music, I had become a fan of Jerry Jeff Walker's, and one of his albums that in Luckenbach, Texas, they were recording the album live. They'd put microphones in all the trees outside, and there was all these banty roosters running around making noise, and somebody on the record said, they were rolling tape, and somebody said, man, can you hear the chickens? The chickens are in stereo. And somebody else said, I think it might have been Bob Livingston, said, that's Stereo Chickens. And so they were doing this thing from Music Man, pick a little, talk a little, pick a little. Anyway, it became a track on the record called Stereo Chickens. When we started looking for a name, we wanted something that would get people's attention. We actually went round and round. We had a Facebook contest to try to name the group, and nobody liked the name, but I started thinking about all the merch.
Nobody liked the name Stereo Chickens.
Yeah, but I started thinking about all the merch opportunities with T-shirts and hats, and I convinced my wife that we were going to make $1 gazillion whether we could sing or not, just off the merch sales. But actually, so that's where it came from, and that name has garnered us a lot of attention.
So you're in the studio, you're recording?
Not yet. We're actually writing songs for that. We're going to probably record it in Austin, although there's somebody lobbying, a friend of mine here, a big producer, lobbying to have us record in L.A. But so we're in the process because we're not going to do an EP. We're going to do a full album, 12 songs. So we've been calling in some of our big songwriter friends in Nashville we've been writing with. So we got about half of the songs written, and we got about 6 more to go. And we're really excited. We're going to be writing with Annie Bosco, I think, in a couple weeks. She's going to be writing with us, and then we're going to feature some of our famous artist friends on the record as well.
So who's going to book you?
So we have actually, I've been booking us, this year for the fairs, and we got quite a few dates already on the West Coast. We're getting ready to sign an exclusive deal with a big national agent here.
Oh, very good.
Sometime in the next few weeks.
So the agency is Ken McMeans Presents.
It is.
And are you looking for talent? When I was at the record label, we always said that we weren't actively pursuing, but we were always actively looking.
Yeah, I cut my roster as things started to take off with Stereo Chickens, just as, there's only so much time in a day trying to balance. I cut my roster from 25 artists back to 4 of my sort of flagship artists. I wasn't going to take any additional artists on, but I did actually take Sarah Darling on the roster a couple months ago because I've been a fan of hers for a long time, and I had been pursuing her for a while. So finally, we're not really taking on anybody. as a time constraint thing. That being said, I always listen when people send me stuff. When I was pounding the pavement in LA back in the days when I was writing for TV and stuff, I always said that if I ever had any success at all, I was going to listen to everything anybody sent me. And I do that. I listen to everything. Sometimes I send people on to other agents or other managers that might be interested, and I've set up a few of those things over the years. So I always listen to everything that gets sent to me.
How does someone find you? Facebook or a website or?
Yeah, KenMcMeansPresents.com. There's contact information there. I always, if people are sending me music, I just prefer they send me 1 or 2 songs in a file, a Dropbox link,
If you had your choice of any artist you could ever work with, I mean, there's just like that one, who would it be?
That's a group called Need to Breathe.
Need to Breathe.
Yeah, just amazing. My daughter and I flew out to Chicago from San Diego last fall to see them. Yeah, they're Americana Christian rock group, but
very cool.
Absolutely my
Very
favorites.
cool. Ken, glad you made it on the show. Thanks for the drive down here to sunny California, although we do have a threat of rain. But Ken McMean with Ken McMean Presents here
it's
on...
easy for you to say,
yeah, it's been a long day. On this week's edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender for Bob Bender Productions. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.